Dobar dan, dobrodošli na današnjem strokovnem dogodku v okviru festivala LIFFe. Današnji dogodek je namenjen enemu pogledu v prihodnost industrije po pandemiji in kot smo napovedali, bo dogodek potekal v angleškem jeziku, tako da jaz nadaljujem v angleščini. Za vse tiste, ki si pa želite več vpogleda, pripravljeno bo tudi poročilo, ki bo na voljo na spletnih straneh Motovile in AKMS mreže in tako da tudi za vas bo poskrbljeno. But now I'm switching to English as we are here not only from Slovenia but also from near and far. So hello everybody, welcome to today's Zoom event titled The Future of the Audiovisual Industry After the Pandemic, a Look Ahead. We are very glad to have you all here with us today. My name is Sabina and I represent Motovila Institute, the Creative Europe Desk Slovenia, so the information office of the Creative Europe program here in Slovenia. In a few seconds, I will be joined by Jure Matičić, who is the president of Slovenian Art Cinema Network. He is the co-host of this event, and he will help me to introduce you to what to expect in the next 2 hours and a half. So we will be together from 1 to 3:30. We will have a break at 2 o'clock after the first part with our first speaker. The debate will follow. And in the between, we will have also my colleague Ines, who will moderate questions after the first speaker, whom you can also see now. She is Joanna Koljonen. But firstly, to just mention a few things to organize this event, Motovila, Creative Europe Desk Slovenia, and the Slovenian Art Cinema Network joined forces again in the framework of the Ljubljana International Film Festival. The festival is one of the 3 festivals which is supported by the Creative Europe Media Program. We are very proud of it. And this event today is co-produced with the Center for Creativity as the part of the series of professional events tackling trends in culture and creative sectors. Since this event today is focusing on audiovisual industry, we are also happy that we have the support of Slovenian Film Center and the Municipality of Ljubljana. And mentioning Ljubljana, we would be really happy to host you all here in person to do the exchange and networking in the old way. But Slovenia is facing severe circumstances with the COVID pandemic, and so we had to move to the digital premises. The whole festival is going on digitally, as in some other more or less countries in Europe. But there is a good side of it. This helped us to gather the speakers of today, so we are really glad to host them. And one of the first speakers is, I would like to say, in a way, very much wanted speaker, I think, this year. She's the international expert on the screen industry today and in the near future, and this is the thing that we will talk about from different aspects. So we are happy to host Joanna Koljonen. Her diverse and dynamic professional background can be described, I hope, or summarized a little bit as a media analyst, a broadcaster, experience designer, author, moderator, lecturer, and for us today, the most important thing is that Joanna is also the author of the Nostradamus report. For those that don't know, Nostradamus report is a multi-year international initiative which is documenting, following all the happenings in the audiovisual and the screen industry, and based on them tries to predict what changes are coming in front of us. This report is a part of Göteborg Film Festival. It's done in collaboration with them and is published beginning of the year every year. And I think this year around Berlinale there was a big we all followed what Joanna said in the Nostradamus report, and some of the words that I will mention are actually also the trends that the new Creative Europe program that is starting next year will embrace as trends and the action lines to be implemented in the next 7 years period. I will name them all. So there are co-creation, collaboration, consolidation, content heights, so everything gets K. And I'm following then later, like all of the Nostradamus report was actually highlighted with the explosion of creativity and chaos. And I think I'm not the first one this year to also make such an introduction. Nobody hoped that chaos will come in this form, will hit us as a global pandemic, which will have, it's already showing its deep consequences. And here in Slovenia, especially audiovisual ecosystem is facing consequences not only of the health system and the situation, but also of the blockage of the system as a whole, considering financing. And that's where we are actually looking very much forward to see what Joanna will share for her international point of view. But before we give the floor to Joanna, who will speak and stay with us until 2 o'clock, and in this time you can also please do share questions, your questions with us in chat, because we will later read them. It's good to take the opportunity while Joanna is with us to ask her. But before this, I will ask my colleague Jure Maticic to present us the second part that will follow, that will a little bit more focus on a specific aspect of how cinemas are dealing with the situation. Jure.
Yeah, hi. From me, from mreže Slovenia, that's the Slovenian Art Cinema Association. So we've been doing these meetings on Ljubljana Film Festival for a number of years now. We've been talking about situations that we're actually in right now for a number of years. So we've been talking about VODs, we've been talking about cinemas of the future, and it all seems that all this is happening now, and in a way we've been preparing for it. But still, the second part of today's panel will have 3 very different cinemas from very different parts of Europe. One is from Poland. We'll be talking to Marinja Gerat from Kino pod Baranami. The second is from the Netherlands. Simon Blas from Cinema Middelburg will be joining us. And one is from our neighbor state in Croatia, from Split. Alen Munitic will be joining us from Kino Mediteran. So what we're interested now is how cinemas in different parts of Europe are coping with closures, with the pandemia, with COVID, with the lack of people that are actually wanting to come to the cinema, and the overabundance of people that want to have their content in the comfort of their home. So basically, we'll be talking about what was going on in the past, what's going on right now, and what we expect in the future. It's been a tradition to do this at Ljubljana International Film Festival, and it's also a tradition that our big supporter in terms of co-financing our activities is the Slovenian Film Center, who I have to thank for this contribution. And now back to Sabina and Joanna. I'm ready to listen now.
Joanna, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I will go through the little dance that we are all becoming so familiar with, the webinar things. I will unmute my microphone and I will start my presentation in just a moment. Let's do that. There we are, share and start the slideshow. All right. Yes, so my name is Johanna Collinen, and I'm so happy to be asked to speak to you today. And of course, heartbroken that I can't make it to Ljubljana, which is a place I haven't visited. In fact, I haven't even been to your country, which is so unfair for somebody like me who used to have 150, 120 travel days a year. My favorite thing is taking trains around Europe to come and speak at different events. And now I haven't been anywhere much further than Göteborg or Stockholm for half a year. Neither has anyone else, of course. Yes, I feel Sabina's introduction already covered a little bit what the Nostradamus report is, so I'm just going to say very briefly, it is a kind of I mean, of course, the name comes from this historical doctor who claimed to see the future. We don't actually claim to see the future. What we do is that we describe the present very precisely, and we try to do deep interviews with people who are working in strategic positions in the industry, which means that the things that they are working on and thinking about today become real in 3 to 5 years. Of course, you know, also the cycles of film production are almost that long. So this report is commissioned by the Göteborg Film Festival and the Nordic Film Market teams, and a lot of our knowledge actually comes from participating in events like this, and I'm really looking forward to the panel afterwards, because we feel that the knowledge is in the industry. What the industry is often lacking is time to actually think about what everything that we already know means. And of course, let's see, no, there we are. No, there we are. We are also publicly funded entirely, in fact, and that connects to some things that I will talk about later today. Our biggest supporter now financially is Filminvest, which is a big regional fund in Western Sweden. None of this work would be possible without them, and of course, I'm enormously thankful for that. So in early February this year, at the Göteborg Film Festival, I presented this year's Nostradamus report, which is the 7th. And these reports are all available for free. You can find them on the website. I will put the link at the end. The idea is that you can download them, read them in less than 2 hours, and that will give you a pretty good update of what's going on. And because we're looking 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead, even the last 3 reports are usually quite useful. I feel maybe this year the usefulness of my report was about 3 weeks. I just made it to Berlin to present it there as well. And then, of course, everything shut down. But now that some time has passed, I realized that, in fact, a lot of what we were talking about is still true. And a lot of what we have been talking about is still true. And that is true in 2 ways. One is that the sort of overarching trends inside the film industry, digitalization, for instance, or the expansion of the streaming wars, as we call them, which was believed to be first an expansion, more services and more money put into the streaming services globally, and then a contraction. All of these changes are happening. But they are happening slightly faster than they would have otherwise have done. And of course, things that we have been writing about for 7 years now, like any moment now, the traditional window system, the release system, or as the French say, the media chronology, has been challenged and will change. Any moment now, we have been saying for 7 years. Okay, that moment came finally this year. But another thing we've also been doing in the Nostradamus report for a long time is to look not just at what is happening inside the industry, but looking at macro trends, what is happening in society in general. And especially important, of course, this is in Europe, Canada, Brazil, some other places where so much of our film industry is publicly funded. So what we do with taxpayers' money is connected, of course, to all kinds of things that are happening, not just the quality of our art that we are making. Unfortunately, those trends have come to dominate this year, and I will talk about those also. But I would like to talk first about that moment of hope and great excitement that I was feeling at the beginning of the year when I said, this is a creative explosion, something incredibly exciting is happening right now. Because I believe that is actually also still true. And now, to start to talk about that, I will just return very briefly to the past. So maybe you can guess from this image, but I'm 42 years old. There is a reason that I am working in the film industry today, and that reason is film. This image is from Richard Linklater's Slacker, but it could have been Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. It could have been Wayne Wang or Paul Thomas Anderson or Cameron Crowe or Larry Clark or Alison Anders or Gus Van Sant or Kevin Smith or Lars von Trier. It could have been the Brazilian film revival of the 90s. It could have been Jeunet Ekerot. It could have been a film like Trainspotting or Lola Rent. It could have been the international careers of Kieslowski or of my countryman Aki Kaurismäki. I come originally from Finland. I was a teenager in a decade when cinema was necessary for life. And I think that a lot of you who are listening today are also in the film industry because you were touched by cinema at a moment when it was incredibly exciting. And I feel like when we look back at film history, every 20 years or so, you get a new artistic wave, you get a new breakthrough, you get new wave cinema in the 50s, and then you get new Hollywood in the 70s, and then you get these kinds of the global independent movement in the 90s and so on. And that is one of the backstories of the present moment. I'll return to that just in a little while. But there is, of course, also another backstory, although back in the 90s, we didn't know that it was connected. Because it is also this year, 30 years, since this TV series had its international premiere on American network television, unbelievably enough. It's David Lynch's Twin Peaks. And in retrospect, all of the elements of what we now consider highbrow television are there. There is an art house auteur who is given space for an uncompromising vision artistically. There is storytelling that is centered on a community with a large cast of characters, which means that you can go on and tell stories for a very long time if you want to. There is a distinct visual style, a refusal to tell an uncomplicated or straightforward story. There are genre elements, and all of this spawned a global obsession. Now, that moment, that path also led to the current moment. And I think that one thing we have to be real about, especially as people who are invested in feature film, and I'm also working with public film funding, for instance, in Sweden, I'm on the board of the Swedish Film Institute, and I love feature film as an art form. But I think we have to understand that the feature film industry globally didn't deliver a new artistic wave when we should have, which would have been somewhere about 10, 15 years ago. We would have wanted a new generation of filmmakers, and they never appeared. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I think a lot of them are basically financial, that the financial crisis of 2001 and then again 2008 just hit the industry very hard at the same time when, digitalization was making the DVD money disappear and many things coincided. It became difficult to become part of the film industry. But now there is a moment when we can feel in the art house space that something incredibly exciting is happening. And actually it's funny because a lot of those filmmakers who are getting these big breakthrough global specific voices who make a big global impact. I'm thinking now of directors like Yorgos Lanthimos, Jordan Peele, of course, and of course Bong Joon-ho. They are not very young. They are sometimes often a little bit older than me. So in a way, the young generation who should have had a breakthrough 10, 15 years ago, when they were perhaps in their 30s, are only finding a way, clawing themselves into the global stage now. But they are there. They are very established. They are great storytellers. They are powerful filmmakers. And the audiences are responding. And I think the reception of Parasite globally proves this as well. You can have an outstanding film, which is complex and qualitative, and audiences, also young audiences, also crossover audiences, will respond to it in the cinema. And I think part of the answer for why is because they have been trained on that quality TV for decades now. Right? They love complicated stories. They read subtitles fluently. They care about politics and human fates everywhere. They are already consuming stories from different countries. And what they particularly want in the cinema, when they go to the movies, is what someone in the report this year, Berenice Vincent, I think she said, it's the elevated art house. Elevated art house is an art house film that you can feel in the body. When I was young, a lot of art house films were very boring. That is not an aesthetic that young people today are very interested in. To me, then it was interesting to see other kinds of people just talking, or very sort of aesthetic images, but nothing happens. That's not popular today. But elevated art house has this power. Yeah. So the lost generation of filmmakers has perhaps been found, or at least they are opening doors. And we were just at the moment in the last year, 2 years, where I felt that we were at a tipping point where I think we were re-engaging younger culture consumers with art house cinema in particular. And these kinds of films that are aesthetically elevated, that have a very strong narrative, but are not uncomplicated. You maybe want to see them many times again. A lot of these consumers, those films are short, which is to say they are feature length. But of course, in the context of the stories we consume today, they are short. But even when they are short, they are deep. and there is something about them that you can feel in the body. Now, why didn't we? I already talked about the economic barriers to risk, right? So when the film industry was in crisis 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that is not a time for filmmakers, for studios or for financiers to say, let's make a new, let's take a chance on new voices. So where did those new voices go? Well, unfortunately, they went to television, right? So especially if you're a woman, especially if you belong to a minority of any kind, it was easier, slightly easier, not very easy, no, but it was a little bit easier to be able to tell stories on television. And also on television, writers have more power than on film in the way that the film industry has become. Unless, of course, you are not a filmmaker. But the writers, they had more space in TV, and TV has really gained something from that. And I think that finally now that we are seeing a global movement for all kinds of representation and justice, and that is also reflected in the demand and in the kinds of films that are getting funded, and audiences are responding enormously well. It's very dangerous when some people are shut out of storytelling, because that means that the stories become less and less and less relevant to the audience. So now, of course, when we have more diversity on the screen and more diversity among filmmakers, not enough, but more, yes, the audiences are responding to that. They do want to see an incredibly political family thriller from Korea. It turns out that people are in fact interested in that. But perhaps I am concerned, and especially now because of the COVID, I am concerned about the situation for young filmmakers, because we are again in a crisis, just as things were looking up a little bit. And other kinds, more experimental kinds of storytelling were being able to be produced with high budgets. This is also a moment when competition for the talent is more fierce, and competition for the audiences is more fierce. And in the next few years, of course, we're going to see a global recession like perhaps never before. I mean, I'm hoping we're wrong. I'm hoping the economy will bounce back, but it's unlikely. And I worry that young filmmakers will not have a way to come in to make feature film. They will be still telling stories, but we have to think about, are there paths into the industry? And if not, how do we create them? Yeah, so I want to say a little bit about cinemas now, because that's, of course, another ongoing trend that we've also been describing for some years in the reports, and you can go back and look at that. Sometimes we're very sloppy when we speak in this industry. We say things like young people don't go to the movies, which of course is absurd, because we also know that young people go to the movies quite a lot. What we tend to mean in Europe is that young people don't like to watch the film of their local countries or European cinema in the movies. And that, of course, is not the young people's fault. It means that we are unable to make content that is relevant enough for these audience groups. So again, a problem, of course, if only older people get to make films. So we are at a moment where we have to now really focus our attention at this development that has been going on for some years, which I call it the polarizing of the cinema marketplace. First, I want to be really clear. Some exhibitors, some theater owners still believe that the product that you sell or the service that you sell in a cinema is exclusive access to a film. So the film is only available there, and that's why people show up. Now, of course, that is just not true for all kinds of reasons that I'm happy to talk about on another day, or ask me a question. The real answer is that the service that is provided by a cinema is the experience of watching a film in a cinema. And that experience is exclusive, of course. But I have, in this year, in the pandemic year, when there is, there haven't been any film, I have been seeing films from the 1980s in the cinema, and I have been happy to pay for it, in the summer when we could do that in Sweden. It's not about the exclusive content. I can watch Escape from New York in my home just as well, but to be able to see it in the movies is fantastic, right? So what you're selling as an exhibitor is the theatrical experience, right? But based on this insight, we also understand that it follows the theatrical experience is not always the same, right? So we have seen for some years this sort of drift where the industry is dividing into, previously I would have said two big piles. And one of them is the blockbuster experience. And the blockbuster product, and the other is the art house experience broadly, right? So the blockbuster product is the the filmmakers, the studios, or the advertising, essentially, the advertising makes a promise to me. You will get a really specific thing. This is what we promise. And then I pay money, often quite a lot of money, to go and have the experience. And I get exactly what I am promised. That is the blockbuster contract. Don't surprise me too much. Give me exactly what you have promised to give me. Wow me, overwhelm me, but just give me, value for money. Give me a Bond movie. No more, no less. Don't overcomplicate it. That's what I want. Right. Now, going to a blockbuster film can also be about belonging. For instance, if you belong to a fandom, like I'm very invested in Marvel superheroes, for instance, or it can be about sharing a big, exciting experience together. But fundamentally, the deal is that you will not be too surprised. Then we have the art house experience. And I think I have to say I stole this image off the internet. I hope it's okay, but I wanted a picture from a wonderful looking cinema in Ljubljana. I read about it. It looks amazing, right? So in the art house or local cinema, which is not quite the same, but let's think of them as the same. In the art house or local cinema business model, the promise is very different. The promise is you come here, you're going to have a great time, but you don't know exactly what you want to get. In fact, when I go to an art house cinema, I want to be a little bit surprised or challenged. And that, of course, has to do with my identity as somebody who I like to consume art in that way, art that has a purpose of pushing me a little bit or surprising me. But of course, also other types of films are shown in these kinds of environments. So if I go and see a classic, in a Cinematheque screening, or if I go to see a film that I personally have a nostalgic relationship to, perhaps because it's from the 1980s, or I perhaps go and see a niche documentary about a topic that I am, for some reason, invested in, those are not as surprising, but they are more about me as an individual. Then maybe I'm exploring something about myself or reaffirming something about myself. So that's a very different kind of business proposition is what is happening. What is the service that is or experience that is provided for me in the art house space? And we have seen across Europe that the art house cinemas are overperforming consistently. That is to say, overperforming, dangerous word in this industry. It means the audience is like something more than we thought. So there's we in the industry, we sit and have opinions. Audiences like this, audiences don't like this. Which is something clearly we're terrible at because so many of our films fail because we don't know what the audience wants. And so often we are surprised because the audience wants something else. Well, the audience wants art house cinemas. And what is it that they get that is the positive surprise then? What is it? Well, I think it's that, and in particular, actually, we've seen it this year during the pandemic because so many, all of the cinemas have had to have these sort of online relationships with their audiences, either through video streaming platforms or just on their social media. And you can see what the relationship is like if you read very closely how audiences and cinemas communicate. And the ones that have succeeded and still have an audience investment, they are the ones who listen to their audience. If you're a small cinema, if you're an art house cinema, if you're a local cinema, you have to listen to your audience. You have to think about who they are and what they need. Otherwise you can't program for them. But if you know who they are and you know what they need and you know what their life is like and what their day and concerns are like, then you can create a menu of experiences that fit them very well. And that yearning hasn't changed during the pandemic. And even when the cinemas are closed, the cinemas who are good at listening can leverage the relationship that they have already built because we know that their audiences will absolutely return. There is so much content in the world. Nobody ever needs to leave their living room. I'm never going to run out, of films to see. But I support my local cinemas because they curate things that I didn't know about already, that an algorithm is not going to find for me. That they curate content for relevance, and that's the importance here. And I think perhaps I will be very interested to see what the panel has to say, but after the pandemic, I think it's going to be key to think about if we have, again, like the blockbuster business model here and everything else here, do we split this other these other kinds of cinema experiences into perhaps more categories. What are the other categories, actually? Maybe there are different kinds of needs. Maybe nostalgia is one of them. Maybe education is one of them. Maybe being challenged by art is one of them. Belonging to a group of people, belonging to somehow invested in my own identity, that would perhaps be another kind of service. And maybe we program slightly different content for different groups for the different purposes. I don't know. I think we're going to learn a lot in the next few years. And for someone like me, the way I'm going to learn is I'm going to shut up and listen to the experts. So, but there is, of course, another thing that is happening in the cinema space that is very exciting and terrifying at the same time, which is that in a lot of places, including, for instance, the Nordic countries, we have essentially a cinema monopoly. The theatrical marketplace is entirely dominated by global conglomerates. And the AMC, of course, is one of the biggest ones. Let's see what happens with them financially with another winter of closures. But it's quite possible, even likely, that a lot of the big cinema chains will have to sell off at least some countries or some markets or some cinema chains. So a lot of cinema real estate is going to be available for investment. And I think perhaps a lot of the commercial investors, whether the current owners or the next owners, they will not be as willing again to take risks. So maybe if there's some small town, smaller markets or things like this, maybe they will also split off individual cinemas. And suddenly there is cinema infrastructure available for people who might want to run local or art house cinemas, because the commercial model may not be as tenable there. On the other hand, we're not going to run out of blockbuster content either for a while, because there is such a backlog. So perhaps the business model is actually strengthened in the short term for blockbuster cinemas. We'll see. But I think that there's going to be a real revolution in local and art house cinemas in Europe within the next 5 years. Yeah. So now that got us talking about Corona, and now I will go back to say something about these macro trends. I showed you this picture at the beginning as well. It's a meme from earlier today. The images on the left hand column are from San Francisco, and the images on the right are from Blade Runner. And of course, the reason the color is that orange is because of forest fires. So this sector, our sector, like every other sector, is part of the world. And it means that what happens in the world and what happens in society, of course, affects us just like it affects every other industry. And one of the most dangerous things about the pandemic, apart from all the terrible human suffering, is that it has been the only news story this year. And there is another news story that is even more important that we should have paid more attention to, which is what is happening with the climate right now. Now, we always talk about the climate crisis as something that is happening in the future. And what everyone needs to understand, that this crisis is happening right now, not in our children's lifetimes, not, when I'm old, all of that. Well, I mean, yes, it will still continue because it will end. It will not end, even in the best case scenario. This is a crisis that will go on for maybe 300 years, best case. But it's happening right now. The Red Cross calculates that in the last decade, 83% of extreme weather events were caused by climate change. 83%. And 410,000 people died in those climate events. Of course, that's a number of just sort of hard deaths in specific crises. We also know that hundreds of millions of people are affected every day by changes in food production, access to water, and so on. And of course, this leads, to starvation and over time malnutrition in children with catastrophic results. But it also leads right now or contributes to wars and migration in the world and affects all of us, no matter where we live. The consequences of ongoing climate change today is affecting our countries. And COVID-19 itself is also a reminder that many of epidemics and pandemics, they will also be increasingly common for the rest of our lives and for some generations to come, because ecosystems are under pressure and humans and animals are living too close to each other. And climate change, unfortunately, contributes to this. This is a slide with some headlines of record heat and climate problems. I stopped updating this slide this summer because it was just too depressing. You're all educated people, we all understand what this means. we humanity have broken the systems that all of our systems rely on. It's complicated, so I'll say it again. We have broken the systems that all of our systems rely on, and we can't put them back together. There's no easy fix for this. This requires us to change how we do pretty much everything in the world. And we only have 10 years approximately to make this change, to survive not just as a civilization, but as a species. If we want mammals to live on this planet, we have to make some real changes right now, starting today. The ice in the Arctic has been there for hundreds of thousands of years and has a vital function in the global climate. And now really serious researchers are saying 10 to 30 years from now that we may not have ice in the Arctic in the summer at all. And there are other similar tipping point events which can escalate very fast and throws this whole system out of whack. And when we get to that point, which again can be starting, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, which is like 3 movies, you make 3 movies and then we're there. It can, even today our farmers are complaining or seeing the effects in food production in Europe of unseasonal weather. When climate change escalates, food production might be under enormous pressure, even if you live in the breadbasket of Europe. So 10 years to change something radical is not a long time. It's nothing. And in particular, in the context of this ongoing pandemic, it's nothing because we're looking at least 5 years of direct economic consequences of the pandemic, at least. And of course, probably a lifetime of paying off the national debt that pretty much every country is in to handle this crisis. And then we have the issue of personal trauma for probably hundreds of millions of people who are directly affected in different ways. On the other hand, globally speaking, our horizon of possibility, what we can imagine, that has been changed. So what is possible is the most important factor in a way, and thinking about how to solve something or change something. And even if you haven't been directly affected by COVID, as an illness this year, of course you've been affected because you work in the film industry. But even if you haven't been affected for some reason, we are all, I have only been indirectly basically affected, for instance. So I am like this gentleman in the TV show Chernobyl. I'm looking at the accident and I feel like I'm not there yet, but the radiation is hitting me. We're all in this together, whether we're getting the effect now or not. So this year, a lot of people who had never experienced a disaster, who had never experienced a war, have lived through a disaster. So now they know what that is. Now it's possible for a lot of people who weren't able to imagine it before. Now they can imagine a disaster. But we have also learned that it is possible to fundamentally change the economic functioning of the world in about 3 weeks, 3 months. That's what it took to change the rules on how we do everything. And actually, I just read a report that there's some scientists, and these numbers, of course, are like, guesses in a way, but these are educated guesses. How much money would it cost to make the energy production changes required to make the Paris Agreement come true? This scientist said about half of what our corona response is costing us globally. Half a corona crisis is the cost of the whole green transformation. It's possible. We can do it if we understand that we want to. I will say now the most important thing and the most difficult thing in this entire talk, which is that depending on where you live, again, if maybe this was your first disaster, but I think we should mentally prepare for the fact that each and every one of us are going to live through more disasters. We don't know exactly what the cause will be. It might be another pandemic, and this one was an easy pandemic because it doesn't kill our children. It might be a war. It might be civil unrest. There are all kinds of, it might be a food shortage. I can't tell you which one it's going to be, but I can tell you based on the statistical likelihood of all of these things happening, that this is not our last disaster. This is, for many of us, our first disaster. And this year is when we learn how to plan for an uncertain future. Another thing we've been reminded of is that in a crisis, those who have power will take more power, and those who are the weakest will be taken from even more. And this is seen in the business space. Of course, we see, for instance, the big streaming services that are funded by big tech companies who have unlimited cash on hand have largely benefited entirely from this crisis. But also in political terms, in country after country, people who had access to or a claim to authoritarian power did a power grab, as you all know, and took on even more. And this is tricky because we're going to have more crises. And when people are afraid, they will vote for leaders who fuel the fear instead of people who are trying to calm the fear, which is counterintuitive, but unfortunately true. And we know that populism and far-right parties are making gains everywhere in the world, even as the world in many other ways is also becoming more progressive and connected. Populism is an existential threat to film production in Europe because we know, and this isn't a guess, we know it because they say it outright, that populists and far-right parties, which are not always the same, but often, they want to cut arts funding, they want to cut public service funding, and they want to curtail the freedom of speech. So that's a big, immediate problem for us. Every time another country falls in this way, the space in Europe to think freely becomes smaller and to make art. But these kinds of governments are also an existential threat to all of the world because they tend to deny scientific fact. And now, on some level, I don't care very much. I mean, I personally care, of course, but it doesn't matter what your personal politics are. It actually doesn't matter very much. But I am very invested in the future of our civilization. I would like for our civilization to survive because I love civilized things like cinema. And that means that no matter who you vote for, you need to be invested in scientific truth or we will not make it. And I also think the COVID crisis has reminded us that having incompetent leadership puts pressure on public funding, right? Because in a time of unrest, we need proactive, science-based decision-making, policy calmly enacted by people who have experience and expertise and want the best for everybody. And erratic policies, lies and nepotism place an enormous strain on public finances. And I have 3 questions for you today, and this is the first one for you to take with you sort of home and think about later, because I know this is a lot, right? This is overwhelming. So here is a little question for you to screen cap or think about later. How do we as an industry pivot to operating in a landscape where public funding is lower or disappears entirely? Unfortunately, of course, I know that this is a very urgent question for you today. But this is a question for everybody in the film industry, and I believe we can all learn from each other here. Climate pressures will mean enormous need for infrastructure investment and all kinds of other public costs. Pandemics and these types of challenges will also put enormous financial strain on societies. Populist governments are going to cut arts funding when they can, and in addition, incompetent leadership will just be wasteful because of their incompetence. And we're seeing this in country after country. On average, the likelihood is that no matter where you live, if your arts sector is publicly funded today, over time we will have less money. And even as you saw, when you suddenly get more money, which is great news that you are able to negotiate for that, it can disappear overnight. So how do we as an industry pivot to operating in a landscape where that funding has to come from somewhere else, or the relationship to the audience has to be monetized in some other way? And let's remember in Europe also, everywhere, in fact, that the effects of the pandemic are very polarized. So for a lot of middle-class people, and in particular people who are able to work from home, are suffering relatively little, and they can use this to make their lives better, essentially, to think about what is needed and what is not needed. But for people who are sliding into poverty as we speak, this is an urgent, lifelong effect on their worldview, on their trust in society, and so on. And a lot of young people are missing education right now all over Europe, and that is very, very dangerous because they may never catch up. And the likelier, if your parents are educated, you have a better chance of managing a disturbance in your education like this. And it means that the polarization, even in stable democracies, will escalate. In particular, I'm curious about, or like it's a little special case of this polarization, is what's going to happen in the United States right now. And I don't really mean the outcome of the election so much as the fact that their COVID crisis is a heartbreaking disaster. And no matter what happens, and I'm so happy for the vaccines, but literally hundreds of thousands of people will die in the US before this is over. So I think that they will have to, in some ways, turn their attention inwards. And on the global stage, of course, also the role of the United States is changing. A Biden administration will try to address that. But it's very interesting to see, to know that in many ways that is shifting, and it's just a fact of the world that is the case. So it also opens opportunities, also because content travels so much, to see stories from other places, different places in Europe and so on. But we have to start to think about what is the role we are giving to our national stories, our language groups, if you belong to a language that crosses borders. What is a European culture? What are European values? Who are we in a world where what is the right thing to be isn't necessarily dictated by a superpower for a while, because of course there are other superpowers who would also like to dictate, but maybe in Europe we don't, their principles don't appeal to us so much either. On the other hand, at the same time, American soft power continues in some way, but it's good to know that a lot of these multinational big corporations like Netflix or Disney and so on, they are in some way disconnecting themselves from the American project. They are becoming supernatural. They want to belong to no country because they want to serve all markets, and they want to not be able to be legislated or taxed. So ideally, I think they would put their headquarters in space if they would be allowed to, right? But it is, we have to be real about the fact that VOD, the changes in the industry have also escalated. As I said at the beginning, VOD penetration is up everywhere. The window system has finally changed. Now that is being changed by the studios themselves, because access to cinema real estate is impossible during the pandemic, and they have their own, like Disney, they have now their own streaming services as well. At the beginning of the year, we had an enormous overproduction of film in the world, in particular in Europe, because there was just so much money available. In the short term, that problem has been resolved. But I'm wondering if there's a risk that we go for the safe bets again, that the films that get made or become very similar. This concerns me. Yeah. And in the short term, by the way, everybody's back catalogs are more valuable. Right now, if you're sitting on, the best Slovenian film from the last 20 years, there's actually an international market for it in a way that there wasn't before. But the window systems are changing, and that means that even though theatrical will be a big part of some films' releases, it's not suitable for every film, or not. Certainly, they're not going to be the same kind of releases. So that's the final question, I guess, is what steps can we take to be part of shaping the new sustainable window system? Because right now it's not decided how will we release films. And before, traditionally there was one way, and now maybe there are going to be 10 or 8 of the common ways of releasing a film, or common ways of releasing a TV show, but in particular a feature film. And you may be a person who invents one of those, you may be the cinema or the distributor or the filmmaker who figures out a way to identify who your audience is, where they are, where is their attention, how to monetize that attention in some other way than the traditional way, because the traditional way has not been working for us for quite some time, and it certainly won't be working for us now. And wherever you are in the value chain, you are part of the choices you make now, and the risks you take or choose not to take with certain projects. All of that is part of shaping the future of what is cinema releasing, what is film releasing in Europe and in your country and in the world. And that's something that we have to actively think about. Yeah. Okay, so I'm about to end here. I just want to mention very briefly, of course, that that there is a real risk that we're never going to catch the under 25s. And I think that, and if that happens, it's because we were unable to make relevant content for them. It is very different to be 25 years old today. When I was a child in the 1980s, my childhood was not very different from a childhood in the 60s or the 50s. But if you're a child in 2020, your childhood is very different indeed from a childhood in 1980 or 1990. So we have to listen very carefully to the younger audiences and really be in their lives. And even sometimes, if you have children, they live in your home, but we don't live the same lives. We have to listen better. And of course, even for people from my generation, computer games is one of our most time-consuming media in the world, and they are getting better at storytelling. This is an old picture. It's just I like it because it's so beautiful. This is from an Instagram drama that a Finnish public service broadcaster made many years ago now. But I think we have to think about if we can't always make feature films, and especially if young, unestablished filmmakers cannot make feature films, it's just not financially possible to do that at the beginning of your career. What are the steps in? And I think the answer to that always has to be audience first. When I say relevance, really what I mean is where is the audience? If the audience, if the young people are on TikTok, then the first films that you make, your first art house films might be TikTok length, They might be YouTube length. They might be Instagram story length. And you can create artistically powerful content in ecosystems that are funded on completely different logics and where public funding doesn't play a big part. Completely different conversation is, should public funding play a part on other platforms? Yes, maybe they should. But because we don't have a lot of money to go around, it's unlikely to happen, at least not in the short term. I think let's always keep this in the back of our mind. Historically, we in the film industry were wrong when we thought that television drama was completely irrelevant to filmmaking. We really thought that. Just 20 years ago, we thought they are completely separate. And now, of course, it's exactly the same industry, same people, same channels, same funds, same artists. I think we might end up in a position where 20, 30 years from now, we look back at all the digital platforms, all the world building generation, and we say, oh, but we thought all of that was irrelevant to all of our other storytelling, and it turns out that we were wrong about that as well. Yes, I'm going to end here. I would like to say that here you can download the report here, and I know that I've been talking sort of very, very top level about things, so I feel free to ask me much more specific questions, and I'm happy to think about those in the moments we have for Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, perhaps, or let's just give it for a little moment. There's also my email address beneath, but you can find the report at göteborgfilmfestival.se/Nostradamus. That's where you can find them. All right.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for this inspiring lecture. Thank you, everybody, for coming, for joining us. I don't see any questions, just comments. You saw that Frank from Creative Europe Desk, our colleague from Flanders, mentioned that his wife was one of the actors in Slacker. So that's like
wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been a little. Hang on. I can't. How do I stop sharing? I have accidentally. There we are. Stop share. All right. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah, no, comments also is fine, of course.
There's one question from, actually from Jure. The cinema business model has been changing, but how far do you think it will have to change for cinemas to survive or to thrive in the future? Good question. Huh?
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't think it's binary. I don't think it's going to be this or that, right? I think that we're going to have some cinemas which are very similar to what we had. Although commercial they are saying the crisis.
Sorry, Anna, we have lost you for a moment. It was like a bad connection again.
Yeah, all right. Let's do that again. Yes.
Can you repeat yourself? I think we have a bad connection.
We future-proof this industry for the next pandemic, which is, everybody should be thinking about that. Then they say, maybe we should have more flexible spaces that can do other kinds of services when we can't do cinema. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. But I think largely we're going to have cinemas that are very similar to today's cinemas. But I think in the space of what is sort of an art house cinema, I think we're going to have the drift where we're seeing already many more of them, which are also more like cultural centers, for instance, where other things are also happening. There's going to be a much wider range of possibilities of what is a cinema. I think that is going to expand quite a lot. And I think the answer here always, and I keep repeating it the same, is who is your audience? And the cinema has a physical location. So actually there are some practical limitations for who can access this cinema, who lives close enough. And you can kind of work backwards from there by understanding genuinely their lives and audiences to see which business model and which kind of content is most suitable in that environment.
Thank you. I also have a question. You said you mentioned how you were actually preparing the report. So you're having interviews, and I'm wondering, will anything change because of this crisis? Because you mentioned before that we're going to face probably another. COVID is just one of the crises. Maybe something else will strike us in I don't know, near or far future. So will you include somebody else, some other partners or experts in your interviews?
Yeah. I read more now, even more than I did before, about just like overall global trends, because right now it's so urgent because we are in an ongoing global crisis, but also because this year has reminded governments and international institutions, and I think perhaps we're going to see soon the non-profit sector, that we have to collaborate and we have to prepare for these situations. So there's a lot of very interesting thinking going on in those spaces that I'm learning from. But when we're doing the actual research for the actual report, it's much more practical, I should say, for somebody who hasn't read. It's much more about this is happening in the VOD space, and like it's much more hands-on about these are tendencies in public funding in Europe, so that it's not as blue sky in a way, or whatever, dark sky as these lectures tend to be. Yeah.
And we have a question from Nina. How do you expect audience habits will change? What do you think?
Gosh, that is such a great question. I now I have to say that now we are of course entering speculation entirely, and I think it is possible that it will also be very different in different markets and cultures, because in one way we are sharing the corona journey, but in another, how much fear or how much distrust or how much tragedy has affected your city, it depends so much on where you live or your region of your country even. So I think probably the answer, it's not going to be one answer. I think that we're going to see a certain carefulness from older audiences, getting the older audiences, unless they are super fans. If they are cineasts, in their identity, they will be back. You can't keep them out. We see this in Sweden, even when they put age limits on events so to protect the old people will come rolling in anyway. They demand to be let in. These are especially the culture ladies. Culture ladies are the backbone of our audience. But then otherwise, I think that in one way the importance of sharing experiences in physical spaces will continue to go up, as it has actually during digitalization also before. We will see even more of that. But maybe people will have a little, like an internal budget almost, for how much exposure, how much risk can I take at any given time. So then maybe if you don't particularly care about the film, the kind of movie where like, will I see it in the movie, will I see it at home? Today if you're thinking, maybe I'll see it in the movie, maybe now you will think, maybe I'll see it at home. Maybe I'll save my risk pool, for something that I'm more invested in. That said, also from seeing just how difficult it is to keep people following the rules, we yearn, when we need something, we need it. And art can be like that. And entertainment and escape can be like that as well.
Yeah, that's true. So thank you. There's another question from Nina, but from different Nina. Her question is regarding the less money future model, especially less public money for investments. How should cinema rationalize so that theatrical experience doesn't get compromised?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it depends on where you are in the value chain, I suppose. So one answer is that production is becoming cheaper. We know this, that, production technology has essentially become cheaper over time. That is one of the reasons why we've seen such a massive boom in filmmaking. Of course, another reason is that we put so much public money into the system everywhere in the world through the production rebates. And that has also created a kind of inflation, a sort of budget inflation that has countered that a little bit. So it's possible that there is some space in cinema budgets to rationalize already, possibly. Depends very much on the movie, but things like VFX and a lot of things that are about not producing things on location, I think are becoming so good that there is real opportunity to make very sort of cinematic experiences there. But then it's also about refocusing, I think, on what is powerful, like what is actually a cinematic experience now. And then I think it goes back to this question, how do you speak to the viewer's body? And actually I showed a quick picture here. Maybe next year we will get to see the final Daniel Craig Bond. And I don't know if you remember the first Daniel Craig Bond, but it starts, which was Casino Royale, and it starts with this parkour sequence where they are chasing each other in this sort of climbing, climbing things and jumping over roofs and so on, which was mind-blowing. And I think the reason it was so powerful was that digital effects had become so good that you could fake anything. But you couldn't fake the human body doing something genuinely dangerous or impressive. So they just put in the best physical stunts they could. And that made it unmissable cinema in that whole sequence. It's still very good. And I'm thinking, what is the equivalent of that now? Like, what is it that we yearn for? What is it that we're not getting at home that we need? And one answer is big sound, of course. But there is something about being enveloped in an artistically vibrant experience, which might be as much about light and color and skill and script as it might be about, 10,000 extras or big explosions.
Thank you, Anna. I think that there's no questions anymore in the chat, but we have another one from a journalist, Maya.
Yeah.
In Slovenia, we don't have extras in our budget. We have minus for years. Where do you see opportunities for our filmmakers?
Yeah, and I think if you can go to any country, I know in your case, of course, also it's literally true, but I think if you go to a lot of any country, filmmakers would say the same. And we have had a structural change in the industry over the last 20 years where producers at least used to theoretically be able to make some money off their films and they often didn't. So now if you get paid for your time as a producer, you're often grateful. So in a way, that is true everywhere. I think part of the answer is that not every story is suitable for feature film. And this is very forbidden to think and say, but I think we have to be real about this. Before the crisis, we were making so many films in Europe that in the market, in markets that make a lot of films, and of course not like Sweden or Slovenia or, but in Spain or France or England, they would have 4 or 5 domestic premieres every week. Of course, those films are cannibalizing on each other. And if we're globally speaking, if we demand that every film that is made or that is released in a market has a cinematic premiere, they will not be able to build an audience. It's just the case. And then we had to start making choices. Some of those films could have done really well, on a streaming platform. Some of those films could have done really well somewhere else. I listen to a lot of pitches also if I work with this small regional fund. And so often I get a feature film script and I'm like, this is a TV show. This is way too much story. We have forgotten, what is even a feature film? So And I think that we have to start to think in more platforms. And luckily, young filmmakers, who consume all the platforms, they are not so traditionalist. It's highest status to make a feature film, but you have to save your feature film for the project that has to be a feature film. If it can be something else, you might be able to finance it in some other way. And then you can get to the point where making that feature film is possible when it's necessary, because you already have your own audience and you bring it in. But if you're mid-career, making these kinds of traditions is very difficult, because it demands us to think differently about, it demands that we realize and accept, and it is very painful, that the art form is also changing around us. I was once young and promising, and now I am no longer young and promising because I am established. And that means that some of the things that I take for granted might not be true anymore. And some of the stories that I feel are very important might not be relevant to the audience anymore. So the answer always is figure out who the audience is and listen to them. I mean it literally. Just find the target group and sit down with these people, spend time with them and shut up and listen and figure out where their media consumption is. And that's going to be the clue for how to either make the film unmissable or how to make it something else than a film and also unmissable.
Wow, that's actually a great conclusion. So always think about the audience, and I'm saying, like you said, more collaboration in the future. So, and also I like the thought that you said that, the experience is the most important thing. So people don't go to cinema just because they're not able to see the film elsewhere, but because of this, not just the sound, but probably also this collective experience of the movie. So thank you for sharing your ideas. We are looking forward to your next report.
Thanks. Can I throw in one more thing?
Yeah.
I just realized, because we've been talking about this a lot in Sweden, also we're on a slightly different scale, but some of the exact same problems. And one is that traditionally, at least here in the film industry, we were often fighting each other. We felt like we're competing, or especially now we've been having to have rights negotiations because of digitalization and so on. And so, oh no, they're getting more than us, and everybody's enemies with everybody else. That has to stop, because it's a thinking error, right? We are not in competition with each other within any national film industry at all. In fact, I would say maybe within Europe, we are not in competition with each other. But the Slovenian film industry, nobody, if your unions are fighting each other, you have to stop. Nobody is in competition with each other. Slovenian film is in competition with all the film of all of the world. But we're also living in a world where you can actually perform on a global market. I come from Finland. Nobody wanted to see a Finnish film 10, 15 years ago. Nobody, even Finns. And now we export globally, both film and television. It's a miracle. I tell you, it can happen. And our population is 5 million. So it's not about the size of the country.
Okay. Okay, thank you. This was a nice final thought.
Yes, now I will stop. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks.
So thank you for at least virtually coming to Slovenia, and for all of you who are still with us, we will continue after the short break.
Hello everyone, the break is over. I hope you managed to go to the toilet, got yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, maybe some water, so that we can continue with not a global overview like Joanna provided us with, but something a bit more practical. So looking into 3 cinemas. But first, maybe a few words about us. That is the Art Kino mreže, the Slovenian Art Cinema Association. From yesterday, we have 28 members. We actually gained a member during lockdown with 29 screens all over the country. It's mostly public institutions, mostly funded by local communities, but we do earn a big percentage of revenue by ourselves, that is by selling tickets. We screen about 70% of art house content and control about 20% of the national film market, which is a rather good result, I think. So in the pandemic, we are closed for the second time now. We've had a significant drop in revenue, no state support to kind of give us back the revenue and make us invest into future programming. And we're not really certain about when we will be able to reopen cinemas and under what conditions. So we're basically in the blank. And thinking about alternatives, of course, as every cinema in the world is doing right now. But what we're thinking about is how to keep cinema the center point of film in the country, the content provider. We want to stay the content provider for many, many audiences. We're trying to reach new audiences and keep the old ones, trying to open up to schools when they are not allowed to go to the cinema. So how to go into the virtual classroom in a way as a cinema. And what is very, very important and is proven to be quite crucial, how to access good quality films. So this is why we're looking into 3 very different cinemas from different parts of Europe that have already kind of tested these alternatives. Some of them rather sooner, some of them are testing them now, or maybe they will test them in the future. So this is why I'm giving the word to Marina Gierat. Marina, you can just turn on the camera, turn on the microphone. Hello. Marina comes from Kino pod Baranami, which those who are Europe Cinemas members probably know very well already. She's from Krakow in Poland. And Marina, the floor is yours. As with the previous presentation, you can post your questions under the comments section or ask them after Marina finishes, so don't be shy and ask away. And now, Marina, yeah, the floor is yours. You're going to be showing the screen, right?
Yes, thank you very much, Jure. Let me just share the screen for a couple of slides of presenting myself. Share, and one more key to do. Hold on. Okay, I think this should be fine. Okay, so just as Jure mentioned, I run a cinema called Kino pod Baranami in the city of Kraków in Poland. We have been members of Europe Cinemas for many years. We are also a member of Polish Art House Cinemas network. And just to give you a small context, usually when we are open, we are programming 4 rooms. 3 rooms are in our main location at the main square of the city. You can see that those are quite small rooms, and we are programming additional screening room, fourth room in a different location, which is like 8 minutes from our main location. So it's close by, and together we have 4 rooms, which makes it so much easier to program, bearing in mind that we have a lot to screen. And yeah, the first lockdown came in Poland on March 12th, and this is when we had to close down our cinemas in Poland. And this was exactly the moment when I started thinking what to do, how to screen films when we are not allowed to screen films in the cinemas. And this was basically immediately after closing the doors of the cinema, I started looking for a possibility to screen the films online. First, the idea of screening film online actually came to me as a joke. It seemed like a completely impossible thing to do, but soon I started digging into the possibilities, talking to companies which were offering online platform possibilities, online screening possibilities. And I quickly found out a company in New Zealand. It's called Shift 72, and I learned that they were already cooperating with such big events like Cannes Film Festival and as WSX in festival, and it turned out that they had a ready-made tool that could be easily turned into our cinema's platform. It was very easy to brand it just into our cinema. And this actually is what happened, that after 4 weeks of being in a lockdown mode, we managed to open our online platform. And I can only tell you that it was the feedback from our viewers was amazing. This was exactly what our audiences were expecting. They were looking forward to ways in which they could support us, and the fact that we managed to give them the possibility to see films online while at the same time helping the cinema, it gave them great joy. And I can tell you that it was from the beginning, it was very important to us to keep it the most cinema-like experience as possible. So, of course, on the one hand, we have many films on the platform from the beginning. The collection is growing, but we really wanted to keep the cinema-like experience. And the cinema-like experience in our mind was to organize as many online meetings and discussions as possible. So this was our main idea from the beginning. We didn't want it to be just a simple VOD platform. So, of course, apart from the films that are available in a TVOD system, pay-per-view, transactional, no subscription, apart from those films, we, from the beginning of the platform, started to organize special one-time screenings, which were followed by online, either a meeting with filmmaker or an online discussion. So we basically moved, for the time of the lockdown, we moved our usual discussing clubs online, for example, students clubs or psychology films clubs. It was all moved to online. And this is how we managed to keep in touch with our audiences during the lockdown. And I can also tell you that the fact that we managed to build this platform so quickly, and we managed to use it for the whole of April and May until the beginning of June, when we opened after the first lockdown, it helped us a lot with, for example, with the possibility to pay our rent, which is very high, and it was not very much lowered for the time of lockdown. So I'm really glad that we decided to take this action and open this platform, because from the business perspective, it just helped us survive. Of course, later, after the first reopening of the cinemas in the beginning of June, the platform gained lower visitors because the summer started. People were already spending time outside, and also in our cinema during the summer film festival in our cinema. But now, when we are in the second lockdown already since the beginning of November, the movement on the platform is up again, and we just changed our focus back to the online platform, and we are using it for all the things that we were planning to do live. Of course, not all the things, because not all the films are available to screen online. But this is basically turned out to be a great help, and we are very happy that we introduced this tool so quickly in the first lockdown. And another thing that I wanted to say is that we are also. I told you that we are members of the Polish Art House Cinema Network, and actually, what Polish Art House Cinemas did in the time of lockdown. We also introduced another platform. It is a platform for more than 40 Polish art house cinemas. So we now actually, as a cinema, we have 2 platforms online on which we can present our content. So it came out as a big surprise for us, because of course I can tell you that 1 year ago, if someone was mentioning to me that it's a very good idea to, I don't know, either have a cooperation with VOD or do something with VOD, I would tell them to go away, and I would say after my dead body. But yes, that happened, and now I can say that we are a cinema with our own sort of VOD platform, and yes, so the perspective completely changed, and basically this is what happened. I'm sure that Jura will have some additional questions about how it's going, or it's been going, and I'm very happy to share more about it. But I just wanted to give you the context of who we are and how we operate and what we did in the time of first lockdown.
Yeah, Marinia, you must be probably the only cinema that I know that actually has 2 VOD platforms, which is really unique and special. But a question, which one is working better for you? The one that you designed yourself, or the one that you got as being part of the Polish Art House Association? And just maybe in terms of numbers, maybe just percentages, you don't have to give us any hard numbers, but just as a feeling, which one is doing better?
Yeah, so definitely the one that is ours is doing better, but for sure I would say it's because we have a very strong connection to our audiences, and we were able to communicate to our audiences that if they watch a film in our platform, they will help us directly. Of course, the second platform is also helping cinemas, because it's built in a way that when you watch a film on the second Polish art house cinemas platform, you also have to choose a cinema in which you buy a ticket. So it's also a direct help to cinemas, so it's a help to us as well. But I cannot really explain why exactly our platform is doing better with us. But I'm pretty sure it's just because it's because the connection with the audiences. It could have been a completely different situation with a cinema which does not have such strong connection with audiences.
Marinia, was there any doubt that your actual audiences will, out of comfort or whatever reason, would not return to the cinema, but rather stay at home, watching the films on the platform at whatever time they want, at however they want?
Yes, it's an ongoing fear for us, because it happened immediately after we reopened the cinema. When we started promoting new films coming to cinemas, there were questions immediately: when is it going to be online? So yes, this fear is in our eyes still, but we try to teach our audiences we try to teach our audiences the windows. So we try to teach them that first a film has to come to cinemas, and online is for later. So yes, in a way it was and still is a fear, but on the other hand, I feel better knowing that if a person can choose between watching a film at home and watching a film in the cinema, and when they choose watching at home, it still is supporting our cinema, then I feel a little bit better. Because a year ago, when I said no cooperation with the VOD is possible, I knew that when people are choosing VOD, they are not choosing Kino pod baranami, and now they have a chance to choose our cinema even though they are watching a film online. Of course, we will do everything in our capabilities to make the idea of cinema thrive. So, you know, whenever we are back open, when we are open during the summer, when we will hopefully be open again in a few weeks, I don't know, we will go back to doing what we do best. So we will be focusing on the cinema again. Yeah.
You mentioned before that you will be focusing on the platform in terms of the closure of cinemas. What's the prospect of you being focused on both the cinema and the platform in the foreseeable future? Let's say that the pandemic kind of quiets and goes away. Will the platform still be an important part of what you're doing as Kino pod Baranami?
This is also a very interesting question, because of course we kept, so we opened the platform in April, and then we still kept it working for the time of the opening of cinemas. So the whole summer the platform was working, as was the cinema, but we could see that the platform's numbers went down completely during the summer. But as I said, probably mostly because of the summer, but also because our main focus was at the cinema. So we didn't really focus that much on the platform during that time. We didn't organize that many events online because we were focusing on the cinema. So I'm pretty sure that in the future we will have to, I don't know, maybe even it would require more people working, because now it's not that easy to do everything ourselves. But I'm pretty sure that in the future we have to care more about the VOD platform also in the time of the cinema being open. So this will require more focus for us during the time of the cinema being open. Yeah.
Okay, Marina, thanks. I propose that we go on with Simon. Simon Blas runs a cinema in the Netherlands, Cinema Middelburg. Simon, can you just turn on your camera and the microphone?
I will. Yes. Hi.
I never know how to pronounce Middelburg. It
sounds good. Middelburg.
Yeah. Middelburg, okay, yeah. That's the Dutch twist in the end. Yes. Very good. So the context of Simon's cinema is that they have a very similar context of a VOD to the Polish Art Association. It's called Pickle. It's my personal favorite and my hero, I must say, the platform, beautifully designed and everything. And you are basically among the ones present, a VOD veteran, basically. So just tell us a bit more about your cinema and the platform and everything.
Yes.
So you're going to be sharing your screen anyway. Okay.
I will share my presentation, and I will, let me see, one share screen. And there I go. And then okay, yes. Well, first of all, I would like to tell you a little bit about our cinema in general. It's a bit of a micro view instead of the macro view that Joanna told us earlier, which was very interesting. But okay, so in general, the cinema, and then I will tell a little bit about our first lockdown in March and what we did then and how Pickle worked for us, the online VOD. And well, we are now in a second lockdown as we speak, and I think we open this Thursday again. So I will tell a bit about this. Well, here you see in the screen our building. It's a monumental building in the center of town, and it's actually from 1607. So it's really, it has great atmosphere. It's very old, and we made a cinema there. And it has a restaurant, a cafe, and you see below a picture of the garden there. So we sit there in the summer, and it has a terrace, and we did some outside screenings sometimes there. So this is where we live. Okay, just some general things. We project with the 4K projector. We have, of course, the daily art house films that I think we all screen, more or less. Art house films, documentaries, classics, kids films, shorts. We have quite a big team of volunteers, some I think around 50, and we screen daily. And I think last year we had around 20,000 visitors for the public screenings. We have some fundings from town, and we are a member of Europe Cinemas. We have some loyalty program with friends, members, and they get a discount when they are a member of our cinema. And some little local shops and companies, they make their advertisements in our cinema. And sometimes, we rent out the cinema for a screening or a presentation or whatever. So that's some things to give you. And here are some, I put some pictures there to give myself a bit of a good feeling. I forgot a bit about having people over in the cinema. So here you see some pictures of some funny moments with young people for our short festival and some introductions and all these things we all love a lot, of course. This is just a sheet I put in to show you. These are all little faces from nice people around town, and sometimes I like to invite people to just pick a film and we screen it and they give a little introduction. And these are really nice moments, nice nights. You know, they bring their friends, their neighbors, their mothers, fathers, family, and we are always sold out with this. And it's a really nice way of getting to know people. And I'm always curious what people love about film, and they tell us a bit about it. So yeah, it's a nice project, the Film Choice. Some pictures here from collaborations we do a lot with, national festivals we have. Maybe you've heard of Rotterdam. It's every year in January. We have like ITVA. It starts actually tomorrow. It's a documentary festival in Amsterdam. We always work with them. And some movies that matter. These are more films on human rights. It's in Den Haag. And okay, we have a little picture there from Pickle. I come to that later. Some pictures of me around Europe, because as being a member of Europe Cinemas, I love to be with colleagues and visit friends and learn about everything they do, because I'm very curious, and yeah, it helps me really a lot. So I can recommend that. So I met Spike Lee there in Cannes one time, and above I'm in Carlo Vivari in a jury, and I think somewhere left is the conference from Europa Cinemas. Yeah, picture of Sofia of the Innovation Lab. Very helpful, very good. Okay, another picture of we have every year many of these short festivals with students. I like it a lot. It's always a bit messy, but it's lots of fun, and it's crowded, and it gives a nice feeling there. So you might think now that we have only like young audiences, but that's not completely true. Actually, we have quite an old audience, but okay, this picture might fool us a bit now. Here again, okay, I try to do my best to invite them as possible, as much as possible. And okay, they come. Okay, then the lockdown. This was, for us, it was March 16th, and then we played a bit with, okay, what to do? Okay, we close. We made these designs. We played a bit with this picture from La La Land, and it's in Dutch. It says something like, by far, with distance, the best cinema around, you know, something like this. And we made this line there to stress, the distance we have to keep now. And I was now just before this presentation, a bit looking at the numbers. And when we reopened, I see now that what did well for us was all these local films, actually, and classics. I think people already know it, but they like to see maybe these times a bit what they know. And the Sofia Coppola film did really well. And I was thinking, maybe because of their advertisements on Apple TV already, they did a great job. And then we had it, and then I think after 2 weeks in the Netherlands, it was exclusively on Apple TV and not in the cinemas anymore. But it went really well in the cinema, actually. Okay. What we reopened after the lockdown June the 1st. And this was a picture of me with Fifi. It's a local filmmaker from our town. And I think it helped us a lot because, you know, everybody was really happy to do something. And then we opened with her, and she was our best ambassador possible. You know, she helped us with everything to reopen, and it was a great success. So yeah, it was good to open with a local film, and it had a really good feeling. Let me see what I have here. Oh yeah, I have some. When we reopened, I was a bit, a bit happy with it because we could experiment with some things that we never dare to do. Like you always have your usual way of working, like a brochure and your programming and everything. And now suddenly we did everything in a different way. So we did only online sales and no cash desk anymore. And we had no printed program, only online, and it was more flexible. Sometimes we skipped a film, sometimes we added another one. And we have now these placed chairs, you know, so you have to buy, let's say, number 4 on row 5. And all these things, actually, I wanted to do that already, but we never did it. So now we did all these things, and, you know, in these times, nothing is crazy anymore. So yeah, actually, it was a good time to experiment with sort of practical things. And okay, I heard some colleagues told us about, is it possible to have films anyway? We have a lot. So, and I noticed that negotiation with the distributors was a good thing to do now. There were new deals possible. So this is now how it looks in the big cinema. You know, we have these green seats are available and the red not, all with this distance. So we have only like 28 seats actually now. We get used to it. Okay, this is a picture of Pickle. They gave us all these designs we could use during the lockdown. I'm coming to this almost. I will just show you one thing. What we actually did during the lockdown and during this whole year was making a second film screen. So here again, you see the picture of the building I showed you before. And next to the big building, you see this little house. And that's where our magic club appeared. So here I will take you very briefly. Some inside pictures, building. And then okay, carpet, seats, the screen, and here it is. We are ready now, and we are actually planning to open this little club next week, only virtual, with a little film, and then we'll see what happens. It has a little bar. We can open the windows actually for daylight. So if you have some presentation, you know, in its daylight, it has another feel. So this is what we used our time really good, you know, because of the lockdown. Okay, so far that's now Pickle, our VOD online film program. We designed, when we started, I think in 2017 with this. It is a collaboration of, let's say, 20 cinemas in the Netherlands. And they, together we have this platform, a site, and we negotiate with the distributors. And we have a package of films. It's really different films than on, let's say, Netflix. And it's really art house. And yeah, we made some more personal campaign with this girl, Jenny. I know her from town, and she's a mother. And we made a little fun with her, some pictures. It's a bit of the story like, okay, I'm a busy mom with 3 kids and I work at home, not much time to go to the cinema. So Pickle is maybe a very good opportunity, you know, when the kids sleep finally and my work is done, I can see a film whenever I want. So we used a bit of a personal campaign with Jenny. And then I show you a little bit the site, the website from Pickle. All the theaters, we all have a page, or let's say a room, and it looks a bit like this. You see a picture of the cinema, and then we promote one film there with a little text. I wrote that, and all programmers do. And then you see down more of the program. And basically, they have about 50 films or so in your. You have 50 films in your room, and they every week there are some new ones, and some leave the room every week. So it's a bit up to date. I think they are there. Let's say a month, or 2 or 3 months available, and then there are basically two types of two prices: $8.50 and $4.99, and they promote it a bit like $8.50. It's like only 2 special beers or something, and you can see a very good film. And important to know is that you don't have to be a subscriber from this. You just can pick one film and pay for it, and that's it. It's you get this code at home, and you can use it for 48 hours, and then it's done. So that's all. Here a little view of the titles: The Painted Bird, Un homme et une femme, the classic, the Dutch film Lara. Okay, so you get an idea of what is the program. I used it one time with, this is a girl from Middelburg, and she made a film, and I was the first to, I asked Pickle, okay, is it maybe possible to have it on your platform, in our room, so to say? And it was okay. It was the first local short film from a young filmmaker, and for her it was nice that you know, the film had a bit of a longer life. Of course, we screened it in the cinema with friends and everything, and then she could, for a few months, she could promote it online, and that went pretty well. You know, a local press, they liked it, so we got, she got really good stories about it. And then some numbers. As a cinema, we have a subscription with Pickle. We pay them €900 for 1 year, and then you see. I hope you can see it. The breakdown of the ticket price. I have one example of this. The normal price $8.50, and then some things. You know, it's like some tax and a part for Pickle, 25%, and some rights, Booma we call it. But then what's left there is like about €5, and then a part of that is going to the distributor. So it's 40 or 50 or 37.5, and then what's left of that, that's for the theater. So it's a bit of 3 parts. So for Pickle, for the distributor, and for the theater. And then a little part of what were our numbers. When we started, it was really nothing, like a few views in a week. And then you see 3 years here, 2018, 19, 20. And I put the views and the admissions. That's the results, you know, what we got from it money-wise. And then you see Q1, Q2. That's the first quarter of the year, so January, February, and March. So you can compare the numbers in 2018. Okay, we had in the whole year 377 views. That's really not much. And around €1,000. Okay, and then 2019 it was a bit more, but then 2020, of course, a lot more. Of course, in the first lockdown, it was the only thing we had to promote. So it was quite helpful then. And then Pickle helped us with having every week a premiere or 2 premieres, like the Roman Polanski film or some Dutch films. So there was something to promote, something to talk about. And here, for that subscription that we have, Pickle gives us every week numbers from all theaters in the Netherlands and all the films. So you see this list. It's not so important, but just to give an impression what we get from them. And they give us promo materials, designs, which I showed you, like these. Atlantis. They made these in on all platforms to use, in Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, in the right way designed. So that's really helpful for us. And then, a little bit of my conclusions. I have a little bit of this Jekyll and Hyde feeling about Pickle. Of course, I think, which we all do maybe, like it's positive. Okay, you have some extra service for your customer. So they ask, is that film coming again, or I missed it? Okay, you can see it online. It's there for you. The film live longer, so to say. I mean, sometimes it goes so quickly. The film comes out and you have it 1 or 2 weeks and then it's gone again. But now you can maybe have it for a few months online and still have it a bit with you. And Pickle, they give us some specials. Let's say in the summer, a package of a festival or some special events, you can promote it. And of course, we keep in touch with the audience during the lockdown. So we talk about these films. A bit in doubt, still I talk about it a lot with colleagues. I mean, you only want people to come to your cinema, of course. And now are we crazy to show them the way online and maybe lose them? Maybe yes, maybe no, or maybe a bit of both. And some films like Stalker or these kind of classics, of course, come better on the big screen. But it's I think it helped us a bit during the lockdown. And this is a little picture of, yes, we're open again. I hope so, Thursday. So that's it.
Good, Simon, thank you. Well, let's hope that you really open. I mean, it would be a really nice thing for every cinema, I think.
Yes.
What really came to mind when I was listening to your presentation, since you've had Pickle for a while, you can have the experience and everything.
Yes.
It does kind of give you the opportunity to stay in touch with the audience. But do you have a feeling from the data that you get that you are getting a younger audience with a VOD platform, something that you would obviously expect the younger audiences using more digital ways of getting their content? Are you getting younger audiences? Because the cinemas, art house cinemas, we in a way have this culture ladies audience problem that Johanna mentioned, which is not a problem, but that's our audience basically. Do you get access to younger audiences?
Well, to be honest, the data that I get weekly and monthly from Pickle, it's not so detailed that I can see who's actually watching. It's more about numbers. But sometimes they investigate it, and I am afraid that it's not really the younger audience. And what I hear is that sometimes they do, but I hear a lot of older people telling me they watch it, and I think that in the Netherlands, at least, younger audience, they are very good in downloading illegally films. So that's a bit of a problem. They know their way. Yeah.
Good. Okay, Simon, thank you. I think we'll continue with Alan. Alan Munitic runs Kino Mediteran in Split, and he runs a film festival. And we'll not have a presentation, but we'll have a good story. So, Alan, turn on your camera. Evo. And Simon, can you please unshare your screen? Or can we do that? Alan?
I'm here. Do you hear me?
Okay, Alan, you can just
Yeah,
begin.
okay.
First, a bit about yourself and the cinema and the festival that you run. We've already been hearing about it, but just for the ones that don't know you.
Yeah. First, thank you for invitation, and sorry in advance for bad signal, but I'm on the most distant Croatian island, Lastovo, right now. I don't have presentation because I still don't have VOD to show, but I have an interesting story about VOD and how we got to have one in few weeks. First of all, Kino Mediterran is a project of revitalization of the cinemas in small Croatian towns and mostly on islands. Our main objective from the start in 2012 was always to educate audience for European films, for independent titles, because Kino Mediterran started in 2012 from a Mediterranean Film Festival, which is also the huge project of our organization. So independent films were always the focus of our work. For Kino Mediterran, last year, 2019, was one of the best years since we started the project, because we had 60,000 people in 1 year on 800 screenings, which is a quite good number when you consider that the biggest city we have, the most cities we have are less than 5,000 inhabitants. So for us last year was really good, and we expected a lot from 2020, but then it turned out like this. What I want to say for the beginning, that when we talk about VOD, and it is a very, very interesting topic for me, I'm the one who supported the VOD platforms and cinemas with VOD platforms even before the pandemic started. We all heard many successful stories on Europa Cinemas conferences, on different festivals, and even if I can remember, I think it was 2 years ago there in Ljubljana, where also we had a panel. And then in Ljubljana, I started to think about serious VOD for Kino Mediterran. But as probably with most of the people and small cinemas and organization, money was the huge problem. And even to make the things funnier, last year, 1 year ago exactly, Kino Mediterran applied to all national funds with the idea of a VOD platform, but we didn't get any money, and then later pandemic came. So that is interesting details, because we were trying to find ways how to finance VOD platforms. While we were waiting to have and get some money, we tried some experiment with Vimeo. But it was very small for us. Easy situation was that we are also a small independent distributor for some art house titles. So basically, last 2 or 3 Christmases, we put our films from our catalog, older films from our catalog, we put them on Vimeo. And for us, it was a way to be and to stay in contact with audience during the holidays and during the time where our cinemas not working, because traditionally we don't work in January. So in the beginning, we realized that Vimeo is not a very good platform. It is really user unfriendly, and I didn't like it, but it was a way to begin. And then the pandemic came. I just want to say one more thing, that these actions we did with films during the holidays They were just fine. We never invested a lot of money into the marketing or made some bigger campaign. So our results were maybe 500 to I don't know, between 500 and 1,000 views during the 2 or 3 weeks of the holidays. But then when the pandemic came, our story with VOD became a little bit serious, but also it came really spontaneously. I remember that on the first day of the lockdown, when we closed the cinemas, I read somewhere in the newspaper a funny article that the Pornhub in Italy, that they gave to the people free codes to see the films. And then I thought, I remember, oh, we have all those films on Vimeo from the Christmas, so let's put them on the Facebook. And that is what we did. We just wrote a funny, we opened, I think 15 older films from our catalog, because they were already on the Vimeo but hidden. We put them, we opened them, we gave them for free, and we made a really funny status on Facebook: if Pornhub can do it, we can do it as well. And we became viral in maybe 2 or 3 hours in whole Croatia. Numbers were huge. I remember it was Friday, and it was Friday evening, and until the Saturday evening, our website fell down. Later I realized that maybe 50,000 people were trying to come to our website to see the film. But, you know, we are talking about 15 European films, not about anything else. But it was just a funny moment with this playing, you know, Pornhub can do it and we can do it. And that... and the rest was like history, you know. We were surprised how many people were interested in all those films. Even with Vimeo, which is extremely user unfriendly, as I said earlier. But the bottom line is that after by the end of the pandemic, in the 2.5 months, around 27,000 people watched some of the films we gave them. Of course, the interesting thing is that all those films were for free. We had in plan to charge new titles. But then lockdown ended, and we started to work. We started to open the cinemas. What I want to say also that we were thinking a lot how to stay connected with audience all these times. So we even discovered the option of Vimeo live stream. And then we were testing that option like maybe for a month. And at some point, by the end of the April, we started also with the live stream of the films. We also did that with the films from our catalog. We charge a little bit, small money for the ticket. I think maybe 2 or 3 euros. And it was okay result-wise, maybe around 100 or 150 for each live stream session. We did 5 of them, I think, and then lockdown ended, so we stopped with that. As soon as we could, we opened open-air cinemas. What was interesting with this live stream screenings was the point that we try to present those screenings like something like the way audience can experience the cinema experience at home. People could chat, we could talk about the films, we did introduction to each film, so it was a little bit more interactive than VOD itself. But the results of both these actions, even when we opened the cinemas, the results of both these actions proved that there is audience for VOD. Especially, we think that as Kino Mediterranean, VOD can be a very good way to stay connected with our audience when we are not on the islands, when it's a winter time, because even our cinemas on the islands, we work during the winter. Those cities are small and we can work once or maybe twice a week. In some smaller cities, even once or twice per month. So for us, VOD could be a good story to stay connected with the audience during those times. And then with these results, we applied to the Ministry of Culture Fund in June. It was a grant for innovative business models. And we applied with VOD. We got the money, not a big amount of money, but enough to start a serious VOD. We also choose Shift 72 as a platform, and now we are implementing, and everything is in process. So I think in 2 or 3 weeks, our VOD platform is going to be alive. What we learned from this story is that okay, we did something simultaneously, but I think that we learned that it is important when you, as a cinema, have relationship with the audience. So that is why we believe that our VOD is going to be successful not only for the pandemic, but also and later, because it will be platform to show independent films, and the audience of Kino Mediterranean, I think, trust to us as a cinema and to us as a programmers that we have good films. So I think that it will be this is going to be the biggest advantage of our VOD. I'm aware that not only us, but any small cinema or VOD platform, we cannot fight with Netflix or HBO, but we can continue to stay strong in the connection with our audience and to bring them good films.
Oh, thank you, Alan. This is a very inspiring story. Well, even more inspiring is that you're in Lastovo and can actually dip your feet into the water. But let's not go into that. Alan, do you think the VOD for you can become a business model? Can it become a source of revenue important for you?
No. No, and that is the reason why we didn't invest our own money in VOD earlier. We were waiting to find a fund or some money that can help us to buy the system. For us, the easier, as I mentioned earlier, we are distributor of independent films. Not many of them. We buy 6 to 7 titles per year, but for us that is the one point which is easier. And the other thing is that we have a film festival, so we have a plan to archive and to put some films from the history of the Mediterranean Film Festival on VOD as well. But I don't think it's going to be a big new source of money. But what I think is that we need to be persistent, and it is something new. especially in these parts. I think it's very similar in Slovenia as well in Croatia. People are not used to this. They have Netflix, they have HBO, they have commercial things. So I think that we need to be persistent, and it can be a good way to stay in touch with audience and to give them the same thing we do as the cinema. As the cinemas, we bring good films, independent films, quality films, cultural films to our audience. I think that we can try to do that as platform as well. I know that people often talk, and there are some points against VOD, of course, but I think that when we think maybe even all these VOD platforms can help audience to realize that watching the films on the big screen is the most important one.
It's a really good conclusion because we are trying to get people to join us at the big screen. Simon and Marinia, maybe this is a point where you can rejoin us and turn on your cameras and microphones. And maybe you two can also answer this last question I gave to Alan. Can the VOD be a reliable business model for you, a source of revenue? And maybe Simon, in percentage-wise, you're the most experienced probably. Just tell me, how much do you rely on VOD with your revenue in general? Turn your mic. You unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, yes. To be honest, not really much, because I think we are still in the process of growing and getting a foot somewhere, and it costs more than it brings. It has to do with the negotiation with the distributors, and some people actually working for Pickle, they must be paid, and it takes a long while to really get a big profit out of it. And of course, we also choose for, let's say, films that are not so commercially, interesting, so to speak. So that's a bit of a difficult thing. And also, we had like very much views with, let's say, the Oscar-winning film. I lost now the title. Can you help me?
Parasite?
Yes, sorry, thank you. Parasite. But then the thing is that was a little bit of an older title, and then, in the model of Pickle, it costs like only €4 and a bit. So you can imagine it's nice that a lot of people see it, but you don't earn much with it. Yeah.
And Marinia, for you, you mentioned about, the VOD being able to help you pay rent in times of cinema closure. But how much of that rent was really getting paid by the VOD?
When I now compare the numbers, and we had during the lockdown, so the April and May, we had 2,000 or 3,000 viewers on the VOD per month. And it was I was really shocked by the numbers for us. These were very good numbers in comparison with, I don't know, 600 or 700 in the summer months. So this was the difference, but monthly. But now that I think of it, I also know that we did so well in the first lockdown, also because we were one of the first ones with the art house cinema online. Now it's the middle of November, and we have in Poland, I don't know, 3 or 4 online film festivals happening at the same time. The theaters are also coming in with their online offer, and so many more cultural offer is online right now. So I know now that it is much more difficult now to compete with other either film proposals or other cultural programming. So I know that it will be very difficult to keep a high level of income from the VOD. So my only comfort for now is that, as Simon was mentioning, it's like a longer life for a film that is no longer in the cinema. It can go to VOD, and we still keep our own audience with us. So this is like a comfort, and I know that we have to, as I said before, work harder now for a bigger focus on VOD as well.
Do you think, as with many things European, especially European films, that the VOD will stay subsidized and should stay subsidized if we're talking about cinema-oriented VODs or cinema-owned VODs that promote quality content? Do you think it should be subsidized more and will stay subsidized? Just your opinion, maybe.
That's also an interesting question, because, for example, I'm also wondering if for example, my or my colleagues here, our showing of European films online, is it the same as if we were showing those films in the cinema, for example, in terms of Europa Cinema support? Is it the same? Of course, it's probably not, or not yet. So maybe it's an idea also to if it would be possible to get some support for screening European films in the VOD section of our work. I remember that an idea from Europa Cinemas from a few years ago, when Europa Cinemas were awarding a cooperation between a VOD and a cinema. And for me, it was a very crazy idea at that time. And now I see that it might have a point as well.
But what I want to say is that I think that VOD is a good, to reach new audience for European films. Because what I learned being on terrain while traveling around the islands, for some people who are not familiar with independent European titles, it is hard to take a risk and pay the ticket for the cinema. So cinema with a good VOD programming can be a really good boost, for the audience, because when they buy 2 or 3 films online, when they realize, okay, I have seen a good film, Corpus Christi is a great film, maybe the next time they are going to go to the cinema and see that on the big screen. So that is the hope, I think, that I count on as well.
I think maybe your question, Jure, about should it be getting fundings, maybe I can imagine, yes, if we offer something extra or something different than only what Apple TV is doing or Netflix, maybe if we have like an introduction or maybe a little short before the main feature, something like this, you offer something more. That might be good to do to investigate.
Yes, because this is what is the difference between cinema online work and regular VOD platform. You're very right. Yeah.
Yeah, and otherwise, of course, you are doing the same as Netflix or so, and they will say, well, we can have funding too then.
Exactly. We don't want that.
Yeah.
Okay, trying to be different than the major platforms, of course. But how has the marketing aspect of running a VOD helped you with cinema and vice versa? Have you been able to get the VOD audiences that only came to the VOD? Have you been able to get them into the cinema with the help of the VOD? Or maybe the cinema audiences to be able to enjoy VOD? Has the marketing been complementary, basically, for the both aspects?
Maybe Simon, because has more experience with the cooperation of a longer experience VOD cinema, because we don't have those numbers yet. We don't know if the people who watch on VOD, if they came to the cinema, because we didn't have enough time during the reopening to know it. In my case, sorry.
Anyone else?
Yeah, the same. Because for us, it's too early to talk because final VOD is not out. But what I want to say that the story I told helped that Kino Mediterranean became viral and more famous on a national level. And I realized that during the summer when people were coming to the open air islands and talk, oh yeah, I have seen your films online during the lockdown. So I think that is the only experience with marketing I can talk about.
Here in the Netherlands, I think it helped a little bit because Pickle is getting more well known now, and like we have always on Thursday the new film program of the week, and now I see in like guides and papers and everything that Pickle is becoming to every week have a place there, you know. So and then they link through to your cinema. So yeah. And I noticed that more people, they tell me about Pickle. So yeah, it's growing, I think.
Let me just encourage everyone else to ask questions. Ines was mentioning that Kun from Kino Dvor may have a question, so just Kun, write it down and ask away. We'll have to wrap it up, I'm afraid. We've been at it for quite a long time. Maybe a suggestion. Everyone just turn on your cameras for a nice goodbye selfie that we have to do, I think. There we go. There's Ines and Sabina. Johanna, are you still with us? Can you turn on your camera? Thank you very much. So what comes to mind in the end is that what Simon said, in these times nothing is crazy anymore, and especially from what Alan was telling us, and this was a rumor that I heard, what was going on with their VOD attempt, or their emergency lo-fi VOD attempt, really made me think that basically what a VOD represents for a cinema is actually keeping in touch with the audiences, just giving them one more screening room for the people that aren't able to come to the cinema, aren't able to get there till 8 o'clock in the evening because they can't get a babysitter. Maybe they can't even get into the cinema because they're in a wheelchair and the cinema doesn't have access. Who knows? There's tons of problems for people to carry around. So basically what we have to do, and what we cinemas always do, is to stay creative, invest into the right things. I know it's a large investment, but I think it's one that's quite worth it. Because maybe instead of posters around town, you invest into a VOD, and that's your marketing platform in the future. Who knows? Maybe we'll even embrace the younger audiences at some point. But maybe Sabina, just for the conclusion, maybe your words of it. We have a bit of an echo because we're in the same room and it kind of goes around. But I have to say that all these recordings will be available online. We'll tell you where they are. And that's it from my side, at least. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Marinia. Thank you, Simon, for taking your time. Thank you, Joanna. You're always very interesting. By the way, I love your remarks about fascism. We should talk about it more. But now to Sabina. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jure. Thank you all really for inspiring food for thought you all gave us, starting with Joanna and following with all of you. And I hope that when we meet, hopefully in person in a year or so, that we will have some results and some steps on. As Alan mentioned, 2 years ago, we met here in Ljubljana, and it gave him some food for thought how to proceed with the cinema of theirs, but what we really hope is really thank you all for helping us to stay in touch with quality cinema, and this is from us we are here as well. Creative Europe still stays here for this, and this is for the end and for the beginning of the new year. Hopefully not so Nostradamus as this 2020 was. So thank you all again.